Good day, my fellow nerds and koala crew, and welcome back to the Corner of Remnant. My name is Larissa, and I'm joined with Emperial Dawn.
Hi!
And today we are discussing quite a few things. We're discussing the Volume 8 trailer, which dropped unexpectedly for us during the week, and also the two books, the Before the Dawn and Fairy Tales of Remnant books as well.
Yes, finally.
Finally, yes, because I only finished the Fairy Tales book last night.
It took me quite some time to get through Before the Dawn, and then when I finally wanted to... I remember I ordered a few books at the time, and the Fairy Tales was just the last one to arrive, so I had to get through everything else before I could finally get to the Fairy Tales, but I rushed through it in about 2 days last week, and I thoroughly enjoyed both. Despite the crazy year this has been, they've done a lot to make this RWBY off-season go by really quickly.
Absolutely.
It doesn't feel like RWBY's been gone, at least to me.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good reactors out there as well this past year, so a lot of RWBY rewatching and stuff to watch. As well, so I mean, yeah, it's crazy to think we're already almost here.
I know.
I'm not hyped just because I feel like I never came off the Volume 7 interest yet. So
it feels weird that Volume 8's coming, because to me it still feels like Volume 7 hasn't finished, even though it has. Yeah. I don't know. It's just such a weird thing. I was talking to Kelly about it the other day when we were reacting to the trailer, and it was just like, can't believe it's Volume 8 that's starting up in a couple of weeks. Like, this year's just flown by.
Make sure everyone to go watch Larissa and Kaylee's Volume 8 trailer reaction. Dropped on YouTube yesterday, a few days ago. Recently, it dropped.
Yes.
And
huzzah! I created a command for it.
It's very good. I watched it last night.
Oh, did you?
Kaylee is still with her stern opinion taking.
Yes.
Her stern and her stubborn ideas.
Yes.
But it's still very, very enjoyable.
She's doing reactions this year as well. So
awesome.
Yeah. So make sure, of course, you check out her YouTube channel, So She Noob. And yeah, if you're watching on YouTube right now as well, I'll try and remember to put it in the description if I remember. But yeah, definitely go have a look at her videos and stuff as well. And as well as the Boopcast, which will be starting up soon, which is her podcast.
Yes.
That she does. Yeah.
That I imagine will be on at some point.
Yeah. She said she's going to do a Boopcast between now and Chapter 1. And then it'll be weekly again, like with us. Yep. We have to organise times and whatnot. But because she has guests on as well, so quite often we'll be streaming at different times to us.
Yes.
Sometimes overlapping.
Sometimes.
Which is funny because I can hear her through the wall talking about things. Both talking about the same thing. Trailer. We'll talk about the trailer first, and then we'll delve into the books.
Yes.
So, thoughts of the trailer overall?
I mean, I liked it. I'm definitely the person who loves knowing nothing. And I obviously, it's like, oh, it didn't show much more than the teaser, or the teaser didn't even show us much in the first place.
No, it didn't.
Again, Kaylee. But I like that. I prefer to know nothing. I prefer to go into something blind. I hate watching a trailer and it's spoiling the entire movie for me.
Yeah,
you know? Not that RWBY has a choice, because half of it hasn't been animated yet, assumingly. But, and that was not a critique, that was just a statement. Let these people work at their own pace. But, you know, I think it works in their favor. I really do. Overall, I enjoyed it. Again, it was just a better version of the teaser. I did think the end line of "Bring him to me," I think is what it was.
Yes.
Was a little ham-fisted, little on the little too on the nose for my tastes.
Yeah.
But it's still good overall. I loved Cinder stuff. I loved the Nora stuff. I loved I love how they put Divine's weapon in there just to be like, there, so trust us. It was coming. Relax.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Ironwood Arm is completely robot. It's not a cover.
Yeah, it's
another thing that people, Kaylee, can get wrong.
Well,
it's just like a new level. Like, obviously, like you had Ironwood's original arm, then you had Yang's arm, now you have Ironwood's new arm. It's kind of like different stages of technology evolving, them getting better with their tech, basically.
Because there was an image of the arm floating around Twitter. I'm not sure where it originated from.
The original artist, the rigging model, and original artist tweeted it out. I think before the teaser, actually.
Yeah, because I remember seeing it about. I saw it after the teaser, but I was just like, where'd that come from?
I very much thought at first it was just like a black glove or mechanical assistance. But when you see the actual artwork and the rigging, you can tell that it's hollow when it is actually a fully synthetic arm.
Because in the trailer, it does look like it could be a cover.
It does, yes. No,
whereas the artwork where you can see more detail and closer up, it looks more mechanical. But I guess we'll find out anyway when we get into the episode.
It's a very Star Wars arm, for sure.
Yeah.
Compared to the normal, like, RWBY prosthetics aesthetic.
Yeah.
It's hard to say back to back.
There is a lot of Star Wars vibes I'm getting from this trailer.
And listen, general, like you have the floating city, like Vespian in the Cloud City.
Yeah.
Episode 5, and obviously Darth Vader to Ironwood. There has been a few rumblings of ableism when referring to Ironwood and losing of humanity and stuff.
Yeah.
And compared to the Darth Vader stuff as well.
And you got the bikes. I love the hopper bike things. They're so cool.
Yeah, it was awesome as well.
I'm looking forward to seeing those on the episode. It's going to be so excited. The bikes! But my overall thoughts of the trailer is I enjoyed it. It's definitely giving us a feel for the volume now. Definitely more of an extension on the teaser. Yep. They're being released so close together. I'm feeling we probably didn't really need the teaser, but I understand why with RTX and everything they wanted to show something. So it makes sense to have a smaller version of the trailer to show at RTX.
Most likely they intended to release that, back in August. But have a platform to release on since RTX was delayed.
Yeah, that's very true. So it would have been earlier, but yeah, rather than just a month out.
And the thing is too, the teaser was only released on like Rooster Teeth's trailer channel. Like, and it's one of those things where you might not have seen, a lot of casual fans wouldn't have seen the teaser.
No, that's true.
It wasn't like a public, like it wasn't like, they weren't advertising, it was just a thing that they had done. But the trailer was on IGN. It was on Rooster Teeth's official channel. It probably had an E-Weekly, E-Entertainment, article about it, like a Comic-Con article about it. That was like the more public, everyone, even if you don't know what RWBY is, needs to see this trailer kind of thing.
Yeah.
And sure, it was just a very standard version of the teaser, but we've had character shorts and stuff this year, and
that's true.
I'll say for one, again, like I think we discussed this 2 weeks ago, that I didn't think we were getting a trailer because I thought the teaser was enough.
Yeah.
So again, thank you for Kaylee for insulting me in the video. Some people did think we weren't getting a trailer. Thank you very much.
I thought we would because they almost always release a trailer. So.
Right. You're right. But again, it was just because, like you said, it was so similar. It was so close to release date already. Do you need to release a trailer? And again, considering what we got, did we need to get that compared to the teaser? Maybe not. But again, I love seeing, like the Watts, Nora, Cinder stuff.
It's setting the scene. It's giving us a bit of a feel what this volume is going to be without giving too much away. So I really liked how it mentioned what their 2 goals are. So evacuating Mantle and also getting Amity Arena up and running. So they're most likely going to be calling for help, whether or not help comes. But as well as evacuating Mantle. So that's what it looks like the 2 groups are split. And that's what their 2 goals are, which is really good. So I'm really happy we got that because we didn't really know what they were doing. So now we've got their 2 goals. One of my favorite scenes from the trailer was RWBY undercover, climbing up the side of this building with a hood up. I love that.
And again, it just goes back to, they wrote these 3 volumes, 7, 8, and 9, a bit more of a closely written story. So you're going to have more references like that. They probably knew.
Hey, Jason. Welcome in.
Hi. I'd imagine that they knew that when they wrote that scene in episode 4, there was going to be a scene in volume 8 like that.
Yeah.
And that just comes to the advantage of, of them writing so closely together and working as hard as they are.
I didn't turn the captions on.
Get to have that stuff.
Yes.
But no, I loved it too. Because I think in some of the preview GIFs and videos that we got from the virtual RTX and stuff, we got the idea that Yang and her team were working on the evacuation process, and now we got confirmation from John that the other team is working on Ironwood and Amity Arena.
Yep.
Getting that all underway. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see that stuff, and obviously then with the Grimm coming in to take Oscar, as we most likely assume. From that
bringing him to me.
And then how Aesop's and the others deal with Yeah, with the others deal with Ironwood and Amity.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting where, as Jason says, where Neo comes in. Again, is Cinder going to bring her along? I'd imagine not. I'd imagine Neo is kind of like her secret assassin kind of role.
I didn't think of that. That's a very good point. She may actually stay in the city, or again, closely following RWBY.
More likely, I don't think Cinder thinks Neo deserves to be in the presence of Cinder. You know, I don't think Cinder thinks that highly of Neo that she's not worth bringing along.
She's just her pawn.
And if she does bring her along, it kind of diminishes Cinder in bringing her the relic. If she comes to Neo, it's like, well, you had help.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So,
which she didn't get the lamp at all. It was all Neo.
Again, Neo is Cinder's secret weapon. Neo is what Cinder's going to use to accomplish her goals, which is exactly the opposite of what Salem wants.
Yes.
We've said it 100 times before, whether this is true or not, that we think that, or at least I think that, Salem knows that RWBY is the thing that keeps Cinder going.
Yeah.
And once RWBY is dealt with, what keeps Cinder tied to Salem anymore?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's the bait. It's the carrot on the fishing rod. And Salem knows that's why RWBY can't get hurt. Or there's some big summer reason that we don't know yet, either or.
I think it's more that it's just more that it's motivation for Cinder to keep Cinder under Salem's control. Yeah.
The one thing that Salem can offer Cinder, but keep from her at the same time.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting again. We got more Cinder teasers. With Cinder, we're gonna get a full Cinder volume for the first time in like volume 3.
Even though I hate her, but I love the villains and seeing what the villains are doing. It's always really good. Especially and Tyrion's returned as well.
Yeah, especially we're gonna get more into Cinder. But again, you think of Cinder, as people have their opinions of Cinder, what have you, but she hasn't been in a full volume since like volume 3.
No,
she
that's
wasn't
true.
Much in volume 4. She was pretty big in volume 5, but not that impactful. You know, volume 6 she was in hiding, and volume 7 again didn't show up until the end, kind of like Adam in volume 6. So this could be the first volume we get in a long time where we're going to.
She's just been popping in and out. She's always been there in the background. We just see her every now and then to see what her progress is and whatever she's doing.
and a lot of the villains like that, you know. And the question, obviously, too. Does Emerald and Mercury come back into the story or not?
Yeah,
you know,
and Hazel.
You know, RWBY, Tyrion, Crow, and all this kind of stuff. There's a lot of potential here. So we just have
there
to
is a lot.
What paths they take, and that's always the thing. RWBY is a smorgasbord and a melting pot of potential, but the writers can only go down so many paths. And some people are going to like that, some people aren't. But I think they always deliver well with the stories they go down to. And it's just you can never be 100% certain what road they're going to take.
Exactly. There's always and that's the thing as well, is them telling the story. We can have all our hopes and things that we want to see within the volume, but at the end of the day, it's them telling the story, and we're just along for the ride, and we enjoy it as with what we get. And just because we're not getting something this volume doesn't mean we're not going to get it in the future. There's always going to be possibilities of things later on, and they're very stuck for time in what they can show in a volume. I know back from when I watched the volume 4 finale at RTX Sydney. It was amazing. But they talked about that, and that there was a scene with Ren's dad actually approaching the leader of the village and everything, and there was meant to be that in volume 4, but they couldn't fit it in due to time restraints. So there's always things that they want to include that may elaborate on something, but they can't fit it in because of time restraints. So I guess volume 7 had all of those moments too, because it would have been great to see the girls at the dance with Team Funky and whatnot. That would have been great to see, but it was something that really couldn't be squeezed in the volume. But
again, like you would have liked to have seen that. I would have liked to have seen Jean and Weiss of Oscar at the movies. Like I would have liked to see that, because that had a lot of connections.
Yeah,
like,
that would have been also something else good to see. I know people really wanted to see the girls shopping for new clothes. That's not how it ended up with getting the new outfits, but you know.
I love how Adam and Miles was like, that was never. Where did that come from? That was never in question. I love that.
It's funny what the fandom was to see and what they sort of cling on to, you know. Yeah.
Another really good example, and we'll get to the commentary notes in a later stream, perhaps next week. We haven't decided yet.
Yeah.
But one of the notes from that, since you mentioned this kind of stuff, was that the summer RWBY Crow talk.
Oh yes.
From chapter 4 was like last on the priority list to add to that episode. It was only in it because they had nothing else to put in that episode.
Okay.
So that wasn't a high priority on their thing.
But it was something they were able to put in. Yeah.
It was just something that they had the time to put in, so they put in there. So
it's one of my favourite moments.
Again, it's one of those things where they have the time to. Do they have the time to put certain moments in?
Yeah. And it's good when they can.
That was an example of a moment that we were all so happy to finally get. But it wasn't even something that they were adamant they had to give us this volume. So again, they're very patient. The audience, us, rightfully so, not as patient, but of course they know the whole story. They know
exactly. They know what's going to be happening and what they can fit in, what they can't.
The story happens in in their head. Think over the whole story in a day. For us, we have to wait years upon years and years to get it. So some writers, some producers handle that differently. But again, we're RWBY fans here. We love it. We want the best for it, and we're gonna say mostly positive stuff about it. We have our critiques here and there, but they're just preferential. They're not harsh criticisms at all from us.
Everyone's different with what they like and enjoy of the show as well. And it's very different. And there are some people who are very critical of it. Then there's others who are a bit more like us, who just like it anyway because it's RWBY and we just love it.
Those critics just because they see the potential and they want it to be as good as they think it can be. So while it can be frustrating, I get a lot of the time where some of those critics come from. There are the haters, obviously. But
every fandom always has some of those.
But just to got a lot to go through, so just a little bit back onto the trailer. One of the first scenes that is in this that we haven't really referenced is obviously we, like I said, we had the Cinder Salem talk, goes back to our Cinder talk before, RWBY undercover, and we have the whole, what seemingly is, what I assume is going to be, what I would assume is Nora is going to try to jailbreak Crow and Robin.
Yep, possibly. I didn't think of that, but I can see that happening.
Certainly release Watts and Jacques as well. Because I assume all four of them are probably in the same complex.
Yeah, we saw Watts and Jacques in the cells, the hard light dust cells, which is pretty neat. But we didn't see. Well, we saw a shot of Crow holding Clover's pin, which could either be in the airship on the way, as we saw back at the end of the volume, or it could be in the cell. It's a bit hard to tell.
I would have guessed it's just like a different camera shot of that. Oh Jesus! Struggling today. Whether that's going to be like in the volume or that was just like a re-camera angle for the trailer. I'm not too sure.
But it'll be interesting to see if they are in the same cell complex together, because that will be interesting.
I just figured just because I'm curious why Nora was seemingly at a jailbreak or absorbing electricity dust, trying to.
It looked like it.
That could be a wild. Maybe she's not doing a jailbreak. Maybe that's just a wild guess of mine.
I hadn't even thought of that, but it's a possibility. She could also be doing something else. We don't know context in that scene.
It looks like she was in a similar complex.
Yeah.
That one.
It will make sense for them to try and break them out, especially Crow. They're probably not really thinking Robin so much, but Crow in particular.
That particular because Nora seemed like she was the most vocal supporter of Robin. So Robin, she might be the one who. And why is she there alone, seemingly alone, doing it? Maybe because she values that.
Yep.
And again, it definitely seems like we're going to get some more Ren and Nora stuff, obviously.
Yes, hopefully.
That's going to lead into.
Another probably of those things.
Things with a delayed volume and kind of it's a long story over these 3 arcs. I think the story will be. It might not be resolved this volume. It might be going into volume 9, but that's also what is volume 9. A lot of people have different opinions on what volume 9 is going to be. Some crazy out there ideas, but you never know.
I think with Ren and Nora, because I'm a huge Nora fan, but I think it's just one of those things where they wanted to include some moments but probably weren't able to with what they had, so they included what they could. And I'm glad that we still have some small little hints and things, and with their relationship, even like with the scene with Neo when Ren got really upset after he saw Neo as Nora, just those little moments are really good to sort of give us a feel of their relationship. And I'm hoping we'll still see something, especially like if Nora goes off on her own doing something, what's that going to have effect with Ren? And
I'm very confident in the idea that. Not only, I'm sure, again, if they had time, they would have put more stuff in. But again, the Renora stuff isn't the main focus of the story.
No, it's not. No, it's a bit like a side story.
I definitely think that this was from the beginning planned to be a multi-volume arc for these two. So this volume was just planting the seeds and just kind of setting everything up. And I think we're going to get some of the more emphatic moments for those two here. What those are, again, I don't know. I really don't know.
I think it's all been very much from Volume 4 when we found out about Ren and Nora's history and everything, and of course the moment on the airship. It's so cute. But yeah, so it's been definitely hinted on for the last few volumes now. So I hope we get to see some more, maybe a bit more on actually where the relationship is at the moment, though there's a lot going on.
And again, going back to our previous thing, again, like had all the Volume 4 stuff, and maybe they just didn't have the time to get back into it until now, Volume 7. Maybe it could be as simple as that, or maybe again, this is a completely different, like, that was their story done, and now they've just simply got this new story arc for them, either or. I'm not sure, but again, I'm looking forward to that stuff. And again, what is going to also happen here with Jacques and what's...
Yes, that'll be interesting.
Like you said, Tyrion clearly on the whale with Cinder and Salem. So curious to see Tyrion and Cinder again. I'll always love those two the same, because I haven't seen those two on the same screen since, was it Volume 4, their very first meeting? Or not their first meeting, but our first seeing them together. That might have been the only time.
I think it was back in Volume 4.
Was in Volume 5, and then Cinder hasn't been back in that group since Volume 6. So
yeah, I think you're right. So it'll be good to see a bit of their banter.
Yeah, because those two don't exactly get along.
No.
And then then lastly, obviously have the shot of Cinder looking over Atlas, which I'm always forget. I'm not sure if that's from the whale or that's from like a nearby mountain.
It's a bit hard to tell. It could be from the whale, but it could whale, but it could it could also be from something else. But I'm thinking it's the whale looking at the texture, and it looks like there's a bit of black gob on there.
I do like from this scene especially. We get to see like obviously the Atlas Armada protecting Atlas.
Yeah.
You see all the ships in the back and all the Grim not attacking Atlas because obviously they're just like, waiting, biding their time.
Yeah.
For Salem to make her move, or for the
it looked like some of them were finding the Grim, because she's probably not going to be able to control all of them, but some of the more smaller flying Grim are probably going to be attacking the ships and everything, but won't be a full-on scale attack until Salem
says so. But I also think that, again, Salem's the kind of person that she's going to sit there and wait and bide her time and wait for Ironwood to surrender or make the first assault.
Yeah, that's why she isn't going straight out. Like, and the two teams too, like, they're not, one of their objectives wasn't stop Salem, it was more like, we need to do these things. Whilst Salem's holding back.
I don't remember if we discussed this last time, but it's a point I keep going back to, is that, in my own head, is that, look what happened the last time Salem attacked a school and attacked a city and destroyed it. She lost the relic. She destroyed Bale, and she couldn't find the relic. So in her mind, maybe she doesn't want to destroy Atlas because she's afraid the same thing will happen.
Yeah.
Or she'll lose access. Because again, you'd imagine too, if Atlas falls, the portal and all that would be destroyed.
Yeah, that's true. It will be. The relic
could be lost until someone, assumably Osborn, can reopen a portal to the relic realm, or however the hell it works.
Yeah.
So maybe there's too much of a risk. There's far too much of a risk involved, and she just needs to get given the relics, by threatening Atlas and Mantle.
That's it.
But that's mostly it from the trailer that we didn't see in the teaser. We got obviously a little more visualization of this new Grim that we see here. And I'm trying to remember what the Grim was that won the contest. I think it was a smaller Grim that won that contest.
Oh yeah.
I don't think it was this.
No, I think it was something else.
I think it was like the smaller, like scorpion looking things.
Yeah.
I can't quite remember. But also I realized this too, and this would be a stretch. When's the last time we saw a creeper? Like a Grim creeper.
An actual proper creeper. Might have been maybe Volume 4. I think we saw some of them in Volume 4.
Did we?
I think so. I could be wrong though.
They were just the weirdest two-legged weird things that were never explained. They were just there.
Yeah.
And I believe they didn't really have eyes, and it looked kind of similar to this. Maybe this is like an alpha creeper, or like
it could be something similar.
Yeah. I assume it's gonna be some like naked mole rat thing, monster thing.
Well, Salem did modify the Beowulfs, not the Beowulfs, sorry, the
Beringles, which
the Beringles.
Any side of the flying Beringles yet? So maybe
they'll be there somewhere.
Maybe they've scrapped, or perhaps just not. Maybe they prefer to go with the Sphinx and Manticores that they used.
I say they're there.
Show up later.
Yeah, there's a lot of Grim, so they're there somewhere.
That's also fair.
But it's possible that maybe this Grim creature is another modified.
I'm sure.
Thing.
Like I'm sure but
because Salem can do that.
You're supposed to go to question like was the Knuckle V something that evolved, or was it something Salem crafted herself? Because I find it hard to believe that's something that she crafted. I think that's something that made it evolved that way.
I'm thinking it evolved that way. It was very old, So
yeah, and like it was like in Animani Mistral, like what purpose would it have to be crafted and put there, or anything? So, and we also did get some like confirmation in the books, at least one in the fairy tale book, kind of confirmation on our, I guess, idea that the god of light, Spring, was probably in Anima, and the god of darkness is placed within the dragon continents, because there was an idea of, like, gods created the dragon continents.
Yes.
So which would assume that Remnant at one point was just, well, again, it goes to what we saw in the show versus the fairy tales, and I think is probably more accurate. But and we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, it's interesting to see. I had some reason I brought that up, but crafting of the Grimm, like, are all like would probably on the dragon continent would be the crafted ones.
Yeah.
Apart from ones that can fly, like say the flying Berengals. So it really just depends what the hell this seemingly blind sniffer Grimm is.
Yeah, that's. I think we're gonna get some new Grimm in this volume, which I'm excited about as well. So it'll be nice to get some new ones. And it's gonna be very Grimm fighting heavy, because in like volume 7 there was a bit of fighting Grimm, but it was also a lot of people fighting each other. So it's actually going to be really good to actually see some fights against Grimm more in this volume.
And one of my favorite things too, you say like we're getting new Grimm. I quite like that volume 7 went back to the well a bit.
Yeah.
We saw the Ursa.
Yeah.
Granted, it was the new Ursa from the Yang trailer, but we still saw the Ursa again, which we hadn't seen since that trailer.
Yeah. And the elephants, so I forget what they're called. But yeah.
They've also explained many times that the Grimm-like animals are different from the region. Sure, you'll find Evermoors and Beowulfs everywhere, because they're like the two original Grimm, seemingly from the volume 6, episode 3, that they were the only two Grimm you could see. They're all across the world, but then everywhere else you kind of have like the Sabers are only in Sonus. Not Solitos.
Solitos, yeah.
Then the Rex, the T-Rexes, or whatever they're called, the Aerodactyls, not Pokemon, damn it. Pterodactyls are only in, again, personally, Solitos, and you have
Hey, Nightwalker.
etc. They're region-based. But it's so cool to see an Ursa. And yeah, I'm sure we will see more Grimm. We obviously have this thing. We obviously have the contest winners, the contest winner from earlier in the year.
Yeah.
Maybe a Chill? Maybe?
Yeah, maybe Chill. That's mentioned in the fairy tales, yes.
Yeah. So speaking of which, okay, I think that's about it on the trailer. And since we've now referenced the fairy tales twice, I'm going to hand over to Larissa to kind of handle the fairy tale section of the stream.
Fairy tales. I love my book. I highly recommend you guys get this book because it's amazing. Even Kaylee's thinking about reading it and saying something.
What do you mean? I can't believe she hasn't. That's how rude. But no, it's like, again, I'm a sucker for just like merchandise is cool and all, but I love stuff like this over like books and figures. I just love something like I love it. I really do.
It's one thing I really love from I'm a big Harry Potter nerd, and I love the books you can get. Oh, hey, it's not the first time we've said your name, actually. I'm surprised your ears aren't burning. Where, like, I had, like, the Quidditch book, and there was, like, the Fantastical Beasts and other sort of textbooks. I always loved the textbooks. I remember I had one which actually had notes and scrawlings all over it from Ron, Hermione, and Harry, and I love that. So this is a similar sort of thing where it's basically written as a textbook from Ozpen. For students to read about the different fairy tales that are very common across Remnant. And there are some ones in here which we've heard about it before, of course, and some new ones. Also, I really liked, there was one reference in the Before the Dawn book right at the end.
Yes, I love that.
So, but yeah, I thought I'll just do a very brief sort of over each of the stories. I won't go too much in the depth, so if you still want to read the book, you can without spoiling too much. But I'm just going to sort of like mention a few things I found interesting about each of the tales without going too much into them. Yeah. So the first one's The Warrior in the Woods. This also gave me very big vibes for, of course, RWBY red trailer originally, of course. But it talks about possibly a silver-eyed warrior fighting off Grimm so a village could live in safety. And I really like this because it also mentioned about people hunting down others of her kind, and she eventually goes missing herself. And it's really one of the first things we see about the silver-eyed warriors. and that they've been around since like forever.
Yeah,
and
one of my big like little takeaways from this was that this was kind of like probably the only real world reference to the Silver-Eyed Warriors that really exists in Remnant, other than the Silver-Eyed Warriors themselves and Osmond's knowledge. Like this is like the one story where if you saw someone with silver eyes, you'd probably think back to this story. But this also doesn't mention anything about what the significance of silver eyes.
There's a very brief moment where it mentions there was a flash of light and Grim disappeared, but it didn't actually really say that was her power or ability or that it was linked to her eyes or anything like that. She was basically a warrior who lived in solitude and fought the Grim so the village could live in peace. And there is sort of a reference to her eyes at the end, but
and it is a little fanficky, but I quite like that. I quite like that it's the way, because it is a bit of like, you know, like you saved my life, you know, I'm eternally grateful kind of story. Again, like I said, little fanficky, little shippy, but again, it's RWBY, so you know, I like a love a little poke in the ribs there from Myers in that regard. But no, it's a really nice little story, and this was obviously the story that I remember. I didn't read through this story again when I got the book, because this was the story that they previewed.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So I read through that. So
that makes sense. Yeah, because I avoided reading any of those.
Reading it because I already read it.
Yeah.
But I do remember quite liking it. And
I also just love the artwork as well. Oh, I didn't mention there's also notes in here from Osmond too.
Those are some of my favorite bits with like Osmond's notes for sure.
But like this is the artwork for.
Art is fantastic.
Look at it, it's so pretty. But yeah, so there's a beginning bit from Osmond as well as a bit at the end of the book about from Osmond, and he has notes on each of the fairy tales as well, which is also interesting with what he says from what we know about Osmond as well. It's interesting what he says about a few things.
But still.
Yeah, half of it we know is like,
But especially when you look at a story, later in the book called The Infinite Man.
Yes.
And you really see that, like, you know, while Osmond is stubborn and stuck in his ways, much like Salem, and very old school in his regard, it really does show that he does have the best of the world at heart.
Yeah.
He just goes about it in his ways, and clearly those ways have changed over the years. Obviously, you had his idea when he was originally with Salem. You then had his obviously ideas when he like dropped off the world and kind of drunk himself into depression. Like, then obviously you kind of have your tales of the Infinite Man, of someone who does stuff, doesn't mean to be this symbol. Then obviously you go into the Family Man, who then finds the relics and then end up getting to the Osmond or the Great King of Vale, then the Osmond we know today.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting. This whole thing is gives you a lot of cool perspective on Osmond, and again, his experiences and all this, and it kind of gives you almost like a little bit more of a clue to a timeline of Osmond's reincarnations as well.
Yeah, it also gives us a feel for the world before the academies. So, of course, it's after humanity was destroyed, but then,
place between humanity's rebirth and before the Great War.
Yeah, where a lot of them have come from. The Man Who Stared at the Sun. So this is the story that was referenced in Before the Dawn. But yeah, it's about a man who had a staring contest with the sun, and that if he won, the sun would stay where he was and benefit him and his crops and everything, or if he won, then the sun would go and benefit others. And in this, the man, he stared at the sun for so long, he actually went blind, but he still kept the staring contest. So, and he ended up sacrificing himself through it as well, because of course going blind, he couldn't see his family anymore. It was an interesting one. But yeah, it was referenced in the Before the Dawn book.
Yeah, and it's cool too, because it's also referenced directly in a later fairy tale on like what this story, how this story had influenced another one.
Yeah.
But no, it's a really good thing. Like I said, I believe. Pardon me. Talking so much. I believe this is referenced by Fox's uncle in like a flashback scene in Before the Dawn at the very end of the book.
It seems very vacuan as well. So that makes sense.
Osmond mentions that in his notes.
Yeah.
It's an old vacuan tale. And yeah, it's the idea that, like, you know, he sacrificed something of his to benefit his family.
Yeah.
But that sacrifice also disconnected him from his family.
Yeah.
because he got while he sacrificed his sight for the benefit of his family for years to come.
Yeah.
He now has to can never look upon them. So he kind of and obviously the sun staying where it was, obviously it was a detriment to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Obviously not in a literal sense. Again, fairy tales.
It's a fairy tale. There's very fairy tale-esque a lot of these, especially when it comes to the sun and the moon.
Yeah. No, but yeah.
Yeah. It was an interesting one.
It's a very simple story, but it's just like a very nice kind of like old vacuum tale of how to interpret the world, and the interpretation of the story changed too, because he mentions how in the old vacuo it was very much like a positive story.
Yeah.
But now in more modern vacuo, it's kind of the idea of hardship and what you have to do to survive.
Yeah.
So it's funny how it changes as the culture changes, the interpretation of the story changes over years.
Yeah. The next one was The Shallow Sea. So this was one of two about the Fullness.
Yeah, and one that was obviously referenced in the show for such a long time. We've always
it was The Shallow Sea.
It's like the one story we didn't know.
And it's
a fairy tale that we didn't know what exactly it had reference to.
It wasn't what I was expecting it to be.
Yeah, there was ideas of it being connected to the shallow water of Vale. There was some rumblings of, like, obviously because we saw Menagerie, how shallow some of the water around the island was. But there was the water between Fullness and Menagerie where Blake fought the Grim Dragon. Like, there were so many different interpretations of the story and what it meant. So to get a very different interpretation of what I'm sure a lot of people expected, to end up being basically a Menagerie / Fullness one interpretation of their origin story that obviously would have occurred just after Remnant was reborn, but again also ties to this idea that this book references that there might be more than just the god of light and dark in this world.
Yeah.
Or at least there are beings like Ozpin and Salem who have semblances or auras that would make them godlike, or have powers that you'd see them as a god, like you would say Salem and Ozpin, who weren't gods, they were just magical beings from the before times.
Yeah.
So
yeah, The Shallow Sea is one or two tales about how the Fullness came to be. So in this particular one, it was I'm just trying to remember now because this is one of the first ones I read.
This one was more like the what you tell your children. This is like the more childish version of the story.
Absolutely.
The second one
was
a bit more the mature, adult, more cynical.
Yeah.
Cynical view from the Fullness towards the rest of the world after all the years they've dealt with. So
yeah, it was an island that had all the animals on it, and the god was wanting something more. So he went around looking for humans who felt like they didn't have a place in the world, to find them somewhere where they could be.
He wanted to find things other than just the animals. He wanted to find out what was out in the rest of the world, and ended up coming across the humans and thinking, "Oh, these are the greatest animals. Let's bring them back home." Yeah.
So
especially the people who were outcast instead.
Yeah. And they put them all in an ark and shipped them to where this island was going to be, and said they had to walk through the water and they would be reborn. And of course, when these humans went into the water, they began to have animal features, so they became the Fullness. But there were some people who were
presented the idea and rejected this idea and were terrified of this notion and couldn't comprehend what was happening in front of their eyes.
Yeah, and they ended up going back to the human kingdoms, and they were the few that feared the Fullness.
Yeah, and that's how so the idea was, from this perspective, that the Fullness was like a blessing, a paradise, a haven.
Yeah.
And obviously this story is false in the sense that we know the Fullness were sent to Menagerie after the Great War.
Yeah.
Not so much. Well, we don't know what Menagerie was before that, but we assume that it wasn't as blissful as this story would have you believe.
This story very much makes it feel like they're talking of Menagerie.
This is the story you tell your children who you don't want to tell them, "Oh yeah, there was a war, by the way."
Yeah.
I've been here for years. It's a paradise, But again, it's a little white lie. It's just like what you say again.
Probably how they would have liked it to have been, rather than how it actually turned out to be.
Sure.
Yeah. The next one was The Hunter's Children. So this one I found really interesting because it is based again before the academies.
Yeah, I would just like to mention too. One of my favorite facts about this is that all the stories are like recorded or written or taken by certain professors and people we know.
That's true.
The story. Unfortunately, some of them are redacted, because they're voice actors, so redacted. But it is interesting. Again, like what perspectives these stories have been written from or reinterpreted from before Osmond then obviously has his notes at the end.
Yes. Yeah, and sometimes I feel like some of them where Osmond's actually really has edited them himself a bit. It feels like anyway.
Of course, like some of the ones that are traditional stories, or some of the ones that are from a source, Osmond has really written himself. But then these ones, which is like, for example, recorded by Dr. Ublek, he's kind of like taken down, written it, and then Osmond obviously there's obviously the ones that Glinda, there's obviously the ones that Lionheart did. So it's all really that was one of my favorite things, was seeing like who wrote what stories, or like how Crow did the God story, one of the God stories, and obviously he's kind of retold that in volume 4.
Yeah. So the Hunter's Children, it also, I always thought with this one might have been where Oz got his idea about teams of 4 for the academies.
Yes, very much so.
But it's about a hunter who had 4 children. Each of them have very different semblances. And after the father passed away, they then decide what they want to do, and they'll go their own separate ways and have their different sort of trials themselves. And eventually they end up meeting up again and then realise they're actually stronger together rather than individually. End up finding the Grimm as a team and move forward as staying together. So it was, to me, definitely could have been something that gave the idea of the teams of 4 for the academies and such. But yeah, it's really interesting, I thought.
Yeah. It just further influences this idea of teamwork in 4s that Osmond has kind of like. It's one of those things where Osmond, through his entire life, of many lives, keep seeing this 4, this symbolism, this ideology of 4, whether it was his 4 daughters, whether then there was the 4 maidens you found in this story of the 4 children.
4 children,
the 4 relics. It really just goes to show that he has this kind of like, he's seen it throughout thousands of years that this idea of 4 is significant.
Yeah.
And he whether appropriately or not, just continues to drive that sense into the world wherever he can be, that the idea of 4 means something.
Yeah.
Even if he doesn't quite understand it, he's seen enough, he's experienced enough to know the 4 thing means something.
Yeah. And I like how this tale is about teamwork and working together as well. I thought that was really a nice touch.
And there's really awesome points about like combining auras and working together, and like they all had ropes, like the whole town had a rope tied around them, bound their aura to that, and then linked it to everyone, so they'd all be like this, like they'd all be like a wall, so the Grimm couldn't hurt any of them, because all together their auras were combined. Now, whether that's something that can literally happen, or it's a fairy tale, I'm not sure, but it's still a cool idea that I love that there was played with, because this book also does play with, but again, being a fairy tale, how much is taken for fact? But
you have to sort of take a grain of salt with it.
It plays a lot with gods, magic, semblances, and it mixes all the 3 together.
Yeah.
And aura and stuff, and it's hard to kind of tell what's real or not, which is quite appropriate to early RWBY, and it's confusing in a sense that way.
Yeah.
This was one of the stories I did have to reread, because I did one that I did forget a little about before, but it's a very, like you said, the idea of the 4 and the story stuff is really cool.
The next story was really interesting. So it's called the Indeciphered King, aka the King, the Crown, and the Widow. So it's about a king who is providing very wise advice to his subjects, and then one day someone comes along with this crown, and he wears the crown, and from then onwards things change, and he ends up sort of like withdrawing into himself from what he saw when he wore the crown. And from what I won't go too much into the story, but basically the crown showed him a vision of a choice he would have to make.
Choice you'd have to make.
Yeah, and in the end, there was one of his people who he had previously helped him see that, yes, you're going to have to make this choice, but let's do this together, and sort of like turn it around into more of a positive thing. But the more interesting thing I found about it was the crown. So we know the crown is meant to be we believe it is the relic of choice.
Yes, this is our first hint at the relic
actually what the crown does. So if this is true with what the crown does, it shows you a vision of a choice you will need to make in the future. So it's very specific that it's a vision of a choice.
Yes.
not just a vision of the future, but it's a choice that you would have to make, because we weren't sure what sort of ability the crown would have, and I like that.
It was the most debatable relic of like what it actually did. Some people thought it was like mind control. Some people thought it might like you control people's will and their choice.
Yeah.
But the interesting, it will show you the vision of the future, but like a choice relating to that.
Yes. And we never really found out what it was the king saw, but it was something so bad that he,
paranoia, it caused anxiety, it caused him to, rather than help, because again, he would help hundreds of people every single day make the choice, make choices for them and do the right thing. But he was so paranoid by this choice he knew he had to make, and it's a cool symbolism of like, it's so hard to make choices for yourself.
Yeah.
But it's so easy for someone to tell you what choices to make.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Like it's the idea that, all you sometimes need is that help, that second voice, you know? And it came down because he was so good at that once he had a choice he had to make himself, he knew, I was like, well, I'm so good at choices, I help everyone else, I should help myself. And he couldn't. Because he refused to have help until the widow came to him and said, well, let me help you.
Yeah.
And the choice is to ignore it. Ignore that vision. Ignore what you saw, because it's not going to do you any good.
Yeah, and we'll cross that when it comes. I also liked what she saw. I won't say what it was, but what she saw when she wore the crown was more of a positive choice. A choice that she wanted to make, but more of a positive thing. So it's not always going to show you something that's bad, that's a do or die choice you might have to make in the future, but it can show really any choice that you might need to make. But I think also it didn't really go too much into detail there, but it didn't show you which choice you should make, or whether
it just shows like a crossroads.
It just shows you a choice where you'd have to make a decision, but not what decision you should make. So that was really interesting too, because we always thought maybe the crown was going to show you what path you should take. But in the end, no, all it will do is show you a choice that you have to make in the future. So at least you know this choice is coming and you can prepare for it.
Yeah, and it makes so much sense, because obviously, like the god of light and darkness were these two beings. They weren't omnipotent. They were. They had their positives and negatives, etc. They had their power base and stuff, but they didn't have. Like a lot of people hate the gods in RWBY. I mean, a lot of people hate the gods in real life.
Yeah.
A lot of people hate the gods in RWBY, and I'm like, but is it fair to criticize them when they don't? Like, they don't have choice like the humans or the Fullness do. Like, that was a gift to them. They don't have this idea of right and wrong. They just do what's in their nature, their instinct. Can you blame someone for doing what they don't have a choice in doing?
Yeah.
That's always my interpretation of the gods of light and dark. Because that's why they gave humanity the choice. That's why they gave them, they can choose light or dark. They have consequences to their actions, whereas the gods don't.
Yeah.
That was the greatest gift they gave to humanity.
So I guess in this way, the crown is showing you, a choice that you have to make, and you will have knowledge of this choice, and you can better prepare for it.
To destroy or create, kind of thing. Like, you have a choice, and you have the knowledge to destroy or create with it. Like, that's kind of the whole thing of humanity. That's the path of humanity. Two more interesting things of this story is that it does mention that the crown is silver, which does go against. But again, it could be just a misinterpretation of the story. It could just be it was painted, it was silver at one point, or it could be a whole manner of different things. Yeah. But the second thing is that I love that, like, obviously all these stories take place before the Great War and after the recreation of the world. So you got to think too, for the longest time, the relics were just in the world that anyone could get a hold of and anyone could use. So I love this idea that, again, someone found this crown, realized what it did, and had a petty problem with the king, gave him the crown in order to corrupt him and kind of say, ha, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And I just love the idea that the relics at points in history were
just in the world. Yeah.
Were used and abused and all this stuff before Ozpin managed to find the lamp, used it to find the rest of them, and then locked them all away for humanity's sake.
Yeah.
So I love getting an example of the relics, especially obviously the crown, but I love to see the relics in the world as they once were.
The next story was The Grim Child, which...
And as someone who is... Again, I know Wendigos were a big controversy in the RWBY community this year.
Yeah.
But as someone who loves the grim and possession and the apathy and loves this whole kind of... Not like, Native American kind of mythology, I love this example of like a grim that possessed people.
Yes, which is what this one did. So it's in Ozpin's notes about it as well, explaining that it seems to be a grim called the Chill. And basically they're a Grimm that can possess a human for a very short period of time. And basically this person becomes cold, white, with sort of blackened eyes. In the story, it also mentions about getting red veins, which is very Salem-esque.
I think Osmond mentions in his notes that that's more of just like the story.
Yeah.
That in actuality, I don't think that actually happens.
Yes.
I think that's just more the symbolism for the story's sake. I think actually they get possessed and basically...
I just thought that was interesting with the little Salem-esque with the veins there.
Yeah,
and Osmond with lots of notes. Like, this is a whole page of notes. Rather, it's usually like very small little section of notes.
That the chill was found in Vale, so we assume it'd be like Fullness.
Look at the artwork though. Oops, I whacked my mic, sorry. You can see with the eyes underneath the bed.
One thing I'm really interested too about this story in particular is that maybe you could help me because I don't remember what the answer was, but that it mentions that the chill's intention is to possess someone and basically be so unhuman-like that other humans would be driven to kill it or kill the host.
No, I think it just uses the host to travel and basically infect everyone. So in this story, it took out the whole village, and it sort of went from body to body through different children. So it started with one child, killed the parents, then it went to another child, and then that killed a whole heap of people, and it ended up sort of traveling over different children to, in the end, kill the whole village. And the last one was the girl who was mentioned at the start. She was the last one to be turned as such. So that was my interpretation of it.
Okay, so the way I read it as, and again, the story compared to what Osmond actually talks about the chill, is that I thought it was more like the chill can possess someone only for a short amount of time.
Yes.
And basically, its intention was to get people to kill the host, like, and then it would go on to possess someone else.
Well,
that was my interpretation of it. And again,
it travels through touch, so it wants, like all Grimm, it wants to destroy humanity and anything.
Curious,
so
again, and this is my main question. I thought it can only control a human for only a few minutes.
Yeah.
So it can't actually kill an entire town in one night. Like
the story said, but it could definitely kill multiple people. All it has to do is touch them.
Yeah, and even says here like the white skin, the hair, and the veins. That's all just like the story. That's not real. That's like just an interpretation of it. But like, I'm just curious. Does it kill people by like possessing them and they just like die after a certain amount of time?
I think so.
I didn't get that vibe. That's what it was. Again, I thought I thought it wanted to be killed.
Yeah, chills are not restricted to hopping from child to child. However, they can possess anyone with the slightest touch. Yeah. The good news is they only found in shadows and almost always travel alone.
I just don't know if it quite explains how it kills. If it just kills them through possessing them over time and they end up dying.
Well, it says if someone has been taken over by the chill, you will know it immediately. They cannot speak, or perhaps they'll only speak the same word over and over. And the last word that the human spoke. Moreover, chills cannot control a human body for more than a few minutes, making it impossible for them to kill a whole entire town. Rely on the element of surprise and the unwillingness of most people to kill a friend or loved one until they are certain they are lost. Small comfort perhaps that if you're unfortunate enough to encounter one, you will likely not survive to tell the tale.
And that's what I mean. Like, okay, but yeah, I guess we both need to reread this story in our own time, I guess. But again, it's like, it's like they rely on the element to kill, to like most people to kill a friend or loved one until they're certain they already lost. So I guess maybe they kill people when they're possessed. Because no one's willing to kill them? I guess maybe I misinterpreted that.
I think it can hop from person to person. But basically that, from when I was reading the story, it seemed to be that when it possessed a human, they were already dead. And then it could travel to the next person, then the next person, and in a way just leaving them all dead. Yeah, but it can only control them for a few minutes, and it can only transfer by touch. So that does restrict it a bit as well. And also it will rely on the fact that if someone sees their loved one possessed by, they wouldn't want to kill it because it's their loved one.
Okay, so I guess that's okay. So I misinterpreted that bit. That's fair.
I think because with Grimm,
I don't know, it doesn't seem like it would kill you just by possessing you. That seems
I don't know, but well, it's said by touch, and then
by touch. But I think maybe it just kills people like any human would kill another human, and then but only for a short amount of time before it has to jump to someone else to then kill their previous host, kind of thing, back over and over again. Not too anyway, I guess we don't know as much about the stories we'd like.
It's very vague as well, but
this one's probably the most vague story, I think.
But it is very interesting, and I guess we'll have to see whether or not we actually will see one in the show. But it's very much, I think, like the apathy, very apathy-like, and it travels alone, so it's usually just one. Yeah. So that was that. The Judgment of the Fullness. So this was very much like the Shallow Sea, but more of a morbid side, serious side to the tale, where humans and animals were at war with each other because of their differences. And the gods appeared and asked them why they were fighting, and they were fighting because they were all different. Then the gods...
another point, too, is that, again, like the Shallow Sea one, these aren't the gods of light and darkness. These are another
different god.
Or maybe perhaps like an Osmond or Salem, someone who was believed to be a god, but was just a powerful person.
Yeah, and this story is written by Leo as well.
Yes,
Leonardo. And then he ended up giving them a gift in a way. He transformed them all to be basically Fullness. So all the humans became animal features, and the animals got human features, so they were the Fullness. And so they became back a new people. When they went to return to their villages, humanity shunned them out because they didn't want anything to do with them. They were not human anymore.
They didn't recognize them almost, these people who just... and the animals couldn't go back to living with the other animals.
No. And also, because the creatures of Grimm leave animals alone, but now they're all technically, in a way, human, but not human. The Grimm attack them like they would with humanity, so a lot of them died because of that.
That's I think one of the biggest takeaways from here. We've known that, again, they don't attack animals.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole thing of the Fullness was a little bit of a grey area.
Yep.
Well, obviously they still attacked the Fullness, but we weren't quite sure if they attacked humanity. The word humanity is a bit vague in RWBY, whether it includes Fullness or not. It includes Fullness. Sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
But here we get the confirmation that because they're now part human, the Grimm are now solely attracted to them as well.
Yep, that's right. So
but they still refuse to attack animals, like the word Remnant said, except for maybe just for territorial reasons, really.
Yeah. So it's like the Shallow Sea, but a bit more of a Grimm serious side to it, because it mentions about fighting the Grimm and also being hunted by humanity as well. The next story is the Osprey one, the Infinite Man. So this one is very interesting, and to me definitely seems one that probably is very much true, but it's been probably altered, elaborated a bit by Osmond. It's written by him as well. But it talks about a man who was helping others, and he helped this village and this people.
Very Christianity, Jesus.
Yeah, very much.
A lot of these stories do have a lot of religious references, which is quite funny when you think about it. RWBY is obviously based on fairy tales, so a lot of these fairy tales are based off religious stories almost.
Yeah, but so even some of our fairy tales have some links to religion as well in some of them. But with this particular one, so he ended up saving this village, and they started following him because he was doing this way, I helped you because I want to help others. And they ended up creating a group, a following, where they helped others.
One thing I'm really interested in too, because I've only just thought about this, because this is also very similar to the original Maidens, and they helped Osmond. So their actions might have been an inspiration for this, which might have been a later incarnation of Osmond.
It could be, absolutely. And it talks about him having magic. That's how he was able to destroy the Grimm and save the village. And in the end, they ended up creating this following called the Circle. And it goes on to say that he ends up seeing these people as family. Yeah. And they become family to him. And when he eventually does pass away, he says he'll be back. And he does, of course. Yeah.
Yep. And again, the whole thing too about a very important point about this whole thing is that Osmond didn't want any of this. He didn't want followers. He just wanted to do the right thing for the
exactly. And he was always I'm just a man, and making mistakes as well.
Yeah, and he ended up having this, in a positive sense, for lack of a better word, a cult.
Yeah.
Of followers and people who who just like was so grateful for his work, and the fact that he didn't take credit, that he was as a very important quote in the book, he was just a normal man. He wasn't anything more.
Yes.
It was that humility that was inspiring everyone to follow him, and eventually, again, stuff happens. I won't say it. It's like stuff happens, ends up passing away.
Yep.
And ends up being betrayed in a sense.
Yeah.
In a vague sense, and ends up trying to find. And his next incarnation years later tries to find the group again, and unfortunately, it's all been lost.
But it also very it seems his goal, and we know it is his goal, of course, is to have humanity working together with each other and not fighting and doing good. And that seems to be his goal when he thinks, I've achieved this goal with this group, and unfortunately, it all sort of turns. Interestingly too, I thought it talks about making mistakes. Like, it was a mistake, but it was not his first and will not be his last. And to me also, because it does involve, of course, a lot of people getting killed, that when Oz says the RWBY, that, famous line, is that I made more mistakes than any man, woman or child, I think also this sort of fits that too, where he kept making mistakes and he thought he was doing the right thing, but unfortunately it wasn't.
And again, this also goes to why Ozpin is the way he is nowadays, because he keeps trying to do the right thing and it keeps getting thrown back in his face. That's why he keeps so much to himself.
Look at the artwork. It very looks Ozma-esque with his hair.
Yeah.
That was an interesting one. I
would definitely assume this is a post-Maiden's incarnation. I don't say that with certainty, but I feel like that.
It's definitely one of the longest stories too in here. The next one was the two brothers, of course, pretty much what we already know. More of an elaborate tale than the one that which Crow said back in Volume 4, and this one is actually written by Crow, funnily enough.
Yeah, which I love that detail.
Yeah.
One of my you go.
No, you go first. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say one of my favorite points about this, and again goes back to my, possibly naive, appreciation for the gods, even after what they did.
Yeah.
Is that they mention here that, like in the real world, even magic, in their sense, that nothing is infinite. Everything has a source. Everything has a resource. So the idea in this interpretation of the story, it says that basically the gods couldn't leave the world until they took their power back from their creations, which was humanity. That they needed that power back in order to leave the world, and that's why the god of darkness was willing to do what he did. Which is a really interesting spin on it. Doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it better.
No.
But it's still again goes to the idea of they're just doing. They don't have a choice. They don't have morality. They don't have. This is just something beyond them. This is something they gave to humans that they themselves don't necessarily have.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it, at least.
And it talks about deciding whether humanity is worthy as well. So of course that does have a grain of truth in it. So it's really interesting. I really enjoyed that one because it was more of an elaborate.
It's all a lot of the same stuff. Creating life. I think it says here that the sun and the moon were their first creations.
Yes.
I believe it was the first thing they did. Then obviously they made animals and plant life. So then he made the Grimm.
Yeah.
Then created. Then the god of darkness brought natural disasters to the world. Then they thought, okay, stop killing my things. Let's make something together. Humans.
Yeah.
But then it's the Grimm are still fighting. It was why are the Grimm now fighting humans? Get rid of them.
Yeah.
They're killing our creations. No. The human. It's no. It's humans are our creations. The world is your creation, and the Grimm are my creation.
Yeah.
You can't just get rid of mine just because they're hurting yours.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
That was sort of their thing. It was and also mentioned about them being in dragon form as well, which is really cool.
Yeah. And I forgot in what point it does mention. I think it's in this story. It does mention it, but it does mention how the world when they built it initially was basically just Saunus and Solitos.
Yeah.
That was it. Until then, they eventually. I can't remember exactly if that was if it was when they left. It was the last thing they did. Or what? But they ended up eventually making...
Yeah, here we go,
the true dragon continents.
Yeah. The even in rest they needed some distance from each other, each dragon transformed himself into a new continent at one end of their world, and there the dragons still sleep till the day the gods will wake and rise and judge.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, sorry. So basically, in this interpretation, they didn't leave the world, they just turned into the continent.
Yes.
And would eventually reawaken to judge humanity.
Yeah.
So
moving along too, because I know we're getting a bit short on time. We had the story of the seasons. I just want to say this artwork is adorable. Yes. And that's pretty much the story of the season. There wasn't too much in here that was different.
Too different.
No, it was pretty much the same. I really enjoyed it.
Just a different interpretation, just like the way they act. Like this one takes this version takes place over a year. This version, it's a much longer version of the story.
Yeah, this one's definitely years.
And they're just it was like they all traveled different places. They all ended up coming here unintentionally.
Yeah.
It wasn't too different. It was just a bit more like like a real, like it was a bit less like a cynical. Like this is actually a more real version of the story than the ones we've heard.
Yeah.
Whereas like the man, he wasn't like locked himself inside. He still left the house, did all this stuff. But, but again, all the same.
Then we had the girl in the tower. So this one is probably only one of the ones we know that is prior to the gods being reincarnated. Source anonymous. So the only thing though for this story to have gotten out is Oz must have mentioned it for it to become a tale. Like, because it's the only one we know which is prior to humanity being reborn.
That's true. Yes.
But
gods as well, but
it's interesting too. This is one of the only ones where it has a little note before the story, which says, I also urge everyone to consider this story's moral and take it to heart as I have. Do what you can for others because you are able.
Yeah, which again goes back to the maiden story and the infinite man story.
Yeah. So just briefly, it told the story of how we believe Salem, why she was in the tower. And so she was locked in there by her father, who was grieving the loss of mother and became a tyrant. And
he also wanted a son as well.
Yeah, he wanted a son. That's also part of it. Ended up locking her in this tower, and she found a way to get a message out to say that I'm locked in this tower, please come save me. And of course, Ozma was the one. Yeah, many tried and died. Yeah. And interestingly, at the end of the story, it's basically what we saw, of course, where the girl asked, so where should we go now? The hero offered her hand, wherever you'd like. The two fell deeply in love, planned adventures around the world, and lived happily ever after.
I mean, it's very much too like assumingly again Salem, was like
yes,
ended up becoming this crowning prize, this grand possession that no one else should look upon, no one else could be near and stuff, and that was why Salem was kind of locked up, because Salem took everything from him in his mind. He's obviously his wife, and obviously her not being a son.
Yeah.
So all very old school, very bad.
Yes. I've had just very interesting backstory to why how she became in the tower, and very much like this was one of the stories that Piro mentioned back in Volume 3, the girl in the tower. So it was quite a known fairy tale as such.
And one of those things too, like obviously, this is a story that Ozpin obviously experienced himself, and it was kind of like he found a lot of value in this, and that's why he's willing to kind of bring that to the world. And also, I'm sure in his mind he wants this idea of Salem to be out there in a sense, but not be direct about it.
Yeah.
We could also like reference to this story back now that Salem's actually a real thing to everyone in the world. But
it doesn't mention her name or anything in this either.
But again, he saw so much value in this story, and he mentioned and the notes in this one is definitely very interesting.
Yeah. And the last story was The Gift of the Moon. So The Gift of the Moon was interesting. It's very similar to The Man Who Stared at the Sun, where there was the sun, and people weren't happy with how much light they were getting. So they were trying to convince the sun to do different things, whether to stay more in one area or in the end go a little bit faster. But in the end, the sun ends up getting burnt out and destroyed. And the people then end up recovering the pieces, and it becomes the moon, and they create a new sun, basically. It's an interesting one. Again, one of those fairy tale-esque.
School, like Egyptian, Norse, the sun and moon being these like real world created things, kind of, and like the symbolism behind them and stuff. Yeah. But the idea that in this interpretation, the moon would just be like obviously just like a broken version of the sun that they put back into the sky before they replaced it with a new one.
Yep.
So definitely very interesting. So I think one of the more just like fairy tale stories that are just there.
Yep.
Again, it's obviously like a sequel in a sense to The Man Who Stared at the Sun, and also a conflict towards the God story.
Yes, a lot of these are conflicting as well. But it's interesting reading them from what we know and what's the truth that we know. But overall, I really enjoyed these books. I highly recommend you get it. It's just a nice thing to have, and I'm also thinking that these are going to become important in the series moving forward as well. We may get some more references to these fairy tales as well. But yeah, I really enjoy the fairy tales book, and yeah.
I definitely think it's definitely a must for just RWBY fans in general. Yes. Because if nothing else, it's a beautiful piece of art. The book.
It's so pretty.
Yeah, and it's just really interesting. It just adds a lot to the world.
Yep. Just one of those things that adds more to the world, and
like you mentioned at the start of this before we went into it, and what you wanted out of the companion book when we got it.
Yeah.
This is very much like a real world in school textbook almost.
Yeah, which I was really happy to have with this. Yeah. Yes. Before the Dawn, we've already gone way over time, but I know you're probably going to take a bit of time to go through this as well.
So obviously being Dawn, I'm going to talk about Before the Dawn.
Yes.
I really enjoyed this book. I'm not much of a huge reader, typically, but I find these really easy to read. This one,
they are easy,
super easy. Really enjoyable. I would love to see someone read this book before they watch RWBY. This one will be Before the Dawn will be a bit harder because there's a lot of characters that are references. Like I remember when I read through this book, I had the wiki next to me.
Yeah.
Just to reference, okay, wait, what name was that character from Volume 3? Oh yeah, okay, Google.
Yeah.
It does a lot of things. It references a lot of Volume 3 characters that died, characters that didn't. It's really explains a lot into semblance and aura. One of the biggest takeaways from this book, too, is that this kind of new interpretation that the Grimm actually might be attracted to aura along with emotions.
Which makes sense, with a lot of things.
Because again, aura is what is humanity other than aura? What is humanity other than the soul? So it makes sense that they'd be attracted if they're humans and their creations. The soul is human. Yeah, it's the one thing Grimm don't have. Yeah, that would attract them to that. So that makes sense. Overall, again, I really liked learning about Velvet more.
Yes.
Coco and Scarlet was one of my favorite groupings in the show. I loved in the book seeing those two together. Learning about Theodore was really cool, and to learn that he's the Dorothy character. It's not RWBY. He's Dorothy. This big brute of a man is Dorothy, which I love that. I love their juxtaposition. Yes. I very much thought he'd be very similar to Lionheart. So I don't know why. I guess Theodore made me think of Leo or something. I don't know why I thought that, but I thought he'd be very, very tame, reserved, much like Lionheart. But to see him this so drastically different, and I love too that he because the timeline of this is what is really interesting, because this could take place even after Volume 8. Yeah. This still might not take. This could be the latest thing in the show so far. It might not be. It could take place during Volume 7.
It's a bit hard to tell because we know it's from when Team Sun moved to Vacuate, which of course happened at the start of Volume 6, but we don't know how long that journey took them and where all this took place.
Exactly how long it took to get to Argus and then to Atlas, either from their heroes' perspectives. So, and again, at the very end of the book, it does mention a storm is coming. Yes. Very Star Wars, very literal. If you're referring to maybe the Salem storm. Not quite sure if that's the case, but we don't know. We know we're going to go to Vacuo at some point. Eddie has confirmed that, but we probably won't get as much as we did for say, Vacuo probably more of a Mistral. We won't get too much in Mistral. Probably won't get too much in Vacuo. But again, that's why the RWBY the Grimm campaign goes into Mistral far more, and the books go into Vacuo far more because they're the two kingdoms we went a lot on. But considering the early volumes of RWBY, when you look in hindsight, it makes sense. We've got a lot of Vale, obviously, because we were there. And Atlas was the next biggest kingdom explored in the early volumes. So, to make sense that those are the two main cities, and then we get the other two in extra content. Yeah. Again, all goes back to our first comment on time and time management and how much they can give to each thing. Yeah. One of my favorite things too was the scene where all our heroes are in the class in the Theodore's room, and you kind of have these glimpses at these photos on the walls, like, you know, the Lionheart one isn't there anymore because he probably knows about Lionheart, doesn't trust Ironwood anymore. Ozpin one, I think, was still there.
Yeah, the Ozpin one was still there.
It really seems like he, more than all the rest of them, had the most connection to this group. Yeah. And probably feels the most outcast because he's the one that we haven't seen yet. He's the one that really hasn't been a part of the rest of all this stuff, you know? You know, Lionheart has been involved, but he's also been involved through the Salem side. Ironwood's been there, you know, with Crow and Glinda and Ozpin. So Theodore probably felt very left out through all this.
Yeah. There's also a photo with Crow as well, which Velvet identifies, which is interesting.
Yeah. No, and it's 100% I think Velvet, Sun are the two, like, all-stars of this book.
Yes, definitely.
Awesome as well. Fox, obviously, still awesome. Definitely continue that momentum. The Neptune is great in this. I think this is probably my favorite Neptune we've ever seen.
And we found out a bit more about his semblance as well, which was history. So that was really interesting.
I love too this. It wasn't referenced in the book, but this idea that he knew Pyrrha quite well in a sense, or possibly, and just knew that. Not going to touch that. That's too good. Not going to go near her. I'll go twice. Pyrrha's not too good. Argus, I knew her from the academy. Not going.
Yeah.
Because we find out that Neptune was from Argus, same as Pyrrha.
Yeah.
So I love that detail. Again, Yatsu, Fox, and Neptune, and RuPaul. That there was a scene there because RuPaul, being the Glinda counterpart, and being based on Rumpelstiltskin, having a semblance that can spoiler, having a semblance that can turn things to gold.
Yeah. And it's irreversible too.
Yeah, it's the first semblance we've seen that has like a real world effect. There's a cat climbing out my side. What the hell? Sorry, the cat climbing on a palm tree outside my window. Never seen that before. Yeah, it's seeing RuPaul have a semblance that can have a
actual
like a permanent effect on the world is actually quite. That's quite magic. Like,
it is.
That's quite a magical semblance. So it's like, that's crazy. I didn't think of it much at the time, but when I watched a few video essays on it, I realized that is the first semblance that does have a real, like, it affects the elements and the alchemy of the world. Like, it's actually
it stays.
Poor Neptune's jacket. But I mean, like I said too, Sun is great in this.
Yes.
He's very different in this book.
Yeah.
He's a bit harsher. He's a bit more stubborn. But, you know, it's all because he's at home. He's in Vacuo, you know, which again makes sense because everything we learned about Vacuo and everything we knew about Sun didn't line up. Almost.
No. Yeah.
See Sun in Vacuo, you get to see, okay, this is how Sun actually, you know, should act given what we know about Vacuo. But again, it all makes sense. And he while he's stubborn and he's kind of stern in his beliefs, because all the people from Beacon are, you know, trying to be this, like, positive thing, but when they relate all that to, like, the tribe stuff, Sun finally sees that, like, you know, this is just their tribe, much like all the Vacuos have tribes and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really awesome. And obviously we get reintroduced to Team Indigo in this book.
Yep.
And they're much I mean, we didn't know anything about them, to be fair.
No.
But most people agree they were definitely a bit more racist than we knew.
Yeah.
But I do like that because, again, like, they look like some. They
gave them a bit more personality because we really didn't know much from what we've seen, so that was nice.
Other than they were insulted by Neptune, which most people probably would have been too.
Yes.
Especially Weiss.
I think also, like, when I originally read After the Fall, I thought the crown was related to Salem, so I was wrong. You were right in that aspect. It's not relating to Salem at all.
But I was wrong about Tok. I didn't think Tok was initially linked to Salem either.
Yeah.
So, but it's one apiece.
Yes.
But I liked, again, that was my favorite thing, is that we got.
It's something completely
like connected to Salem. Like, there's more problems in the world than just Salem.
Just Salem, which was good to see.
Yeah, I found that really refreshing.
Yeah. Personally. And I think it was just good to see. Well, I not really physically see, but, you know, learn more about Vacuo, how Vacuo is, the way of life in Vacuo, the city of Vacuo, as well as the Shade Academy. It was actually good to find out more about that because we really didn't know much, and to find more what motivates the people and and their way of life. It was really good.
We also got some cool backstory on Sun and his semblance and his family.
Yes.
We obviously know that much like Fox, Sun only had seemingly had a cousin that kind of cared for him. Much like Fox only had his uncle. Well, up until his parents. Obviously, he had his parents, but until then, he only had his uncle. Learning that Sun's semblance came from a vision of which I'm sure was very Journey to the West. I'm sure there's a lot of references to that. But this idea that his semblance was just this vision he saw in the heat of the desert, and and it locked his semblance. It was a really cool symbolic thing there. For Sun, and we've got some really good semblance and stuff into, like you said, with Neptune's.
Yes. More about Yasuhashi. I really love Yasuhashi's character. I've fallen in love with him. It's just like a big teddy bear. I love him. But yeah, his semblance is it's scary as well, and it scares him, and it goes through his story with that. We didn't really get too much, I thought, really about Sage. I felt he was kind of left out. And we had a bit of Scarlet, but we didn't get really much of Scarlet's actual backstory as much. It was
I think we got a lot of his personality fleshed out really well.
Yep, definitely.
And again, the way he interacted with him and Coco on the same. Oh, and again, I guess that should be the main thing we should talk about here. Maybe one of the last things, because we are a little running late on time. But the last thing, two last things. First off, obviously the villains. We have Jack and Jill.
Yes.
Or Jackson.
Gillian. Gillian?
I thought so. Gillian.
Gillian? I know, it's spelled with a G. Yeah, so probably Gillian. Yeah, Jackson, Gillian.
Yeah, so obviously, again, Jackson, Jill. Gillian had the absorbing semblance, I think.
Yeah, it was to do with aura.
With the mind control semblance?
Yes. They have two very powerful semblances, and we won't go too much into how they work, but it's explained very well in the books.
But basically they have this delusion of grandeur, and they have these powers to kind of back them up, and they're very symbiotic, which again is I've said 100 times before. I love symbioticness in stories. I love that kind of bound to someone kind of thing. That's why I like Oscar so much as well. So there's more of that stuff in here.
They basically want to return back to how it was. To have a king and queens. And it's interesting too, because mentioned too about king and queens and the crown and, and all of that too. Very symbolic, which I thought relating to the relics as well as how it used to be with kings and queens and monarchs.
Yeah, speaking of the relics, we also got the... We didn't get anything necessarily on the relic of destruction in the book, but we did get a stone of sorts. Many people believe that the relic of destruction is obviously the sword and the stone, the King Arthur's. That and Excalibur. There we go.
Yeah.
There. We also got we had the Weeping Wall, which some people believed was the equivalent to the stone in the story.
Yeah.
The Weeping Well, I think it was. Sorry.
Weeping Well. Yeah.
Which was just basically this porous rock that leaked water. And I think.
Yeah.
I think so. It's been a bit since I read the book. But so the main thing I wanted to talk about, probably the last thing we'll mention here.
Yeah.
Is the reinitiation.
Oh yeah. Yes, that was interesting.
That was the biggest thing for me, because I just thought to myself, if this sticks, and I wasn't certain it would, and it doesn't.
No.
But if it sticks, imagine trying to explain that to casual people if we get to Vacuum and we see all these characters again.
Yeah.
That's a nightmare. So that's why I thought, while I thought that's ballsy as hell and I love it, and I would love if it does stick.
Yeah.
I just thought if we're going to see these characters again, which it really feels like at this point we are at some point, even if just as a cameo, if we just see them in the background, in a big war setting like Avengers or something, surely it wouldn't stick. But and I don't remember half the names here, by the way. But we've got a team with Skull and Coco, which again I love those two together. My favorite team was probably Burn, which I think was Neptune, Nolan. Again, I can't remember all of them. There was Nova, Rose.
They were a good mix. It was good to see the characters interacting with others who they didn't have much interaction with before and fighting together and teamwork. It was really interesting. Yeah, it was actually really cool.
And the trial too, where they go to in the desert and get the the trinkets. That was really cool as well. And like Octavia, the zigzaggy sword sand surfer. We got her semblance was like the actual like what we saw in the volume 3. It was sand surfer. That was her semblance.
Yeah.
I loved like her. Like she was like the most explored out of the Team Indigo. And it wasn't that much, but it was still cool. And her relationship with Velvet, and she kind of respected her, even though she doesn't really like Fullness, but she still respected her. Or not, she didn't like Fullness. I think it was just she didn't like Beacon because they were all like, you know.
Yeah, so the Vacuans did not like Beacon, and
just outsiders in general, but particularly because Beacon, they had the Beacon. They had this group where they'd all come together and talk about their experiences. And again, like Nolan, the one surviving member from Team Bronze, I think, from the Volume 3 fight, Episode 2 with Juniper.
Yes.
Gene Vest, electric cattle prod guy.
That guy, Nolan.
It's actually funny too, because, like it's actually I love that he survived because he was probably one of my favorite design characters because he's very similar to one of my OCs.
Yeah.
So the fact that he survived was like, oh yeah, nice. Which we did get an idea they died. In the first book.
Yeah, and after the Fall mentions, it actually even goes over some of the events that happened directly after the Fall of Beacon, which was really interesting, as well as during the Fall of Beacon. And these people who went missing were obviously died in the fight. So, I thought this book did really good at kind of all the characters and all the stories and stuff we have, from like the investigations to the reinitiations. We have the final fight out in the desert, and Carmine like are in this. Yes.
They're definitely, I wasn't too sure if we'd see them again in the book, and they definitely weren't major characters in the book. I guess Carmine probably was, but
in a way,
they were just like again, because they're working for the Crown in the first book. They're doing a lot of the same here, but like not so much. But again, you can read the book to find out for yourself.
Yeah.
And I also love the fight pit stuff as well, like Natsu, Sun, and Velvet, and yeah, like I know I said like Velvet. So I love
Velvet so much.
Velvet finally.
Yes.
And just in general, like Velvet, I thought was really, really good in this book, and she ended up being a major kind of role in the end of the book.
Yep.
Too.
Sorry, yawning. I think we're probably good to wrap it up there. We've been going for an hour and a half now.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to cover. We're
there is.
This.
We
spent a lot of time on the fairy tale book, but it's
did.
Good.
I was trying to go through it quickly, but there was just so much to discuss about each of those. So, hey, Matthias, thank you for the host. How are you? So I was thinking we'll do another Corner of Remnant in 2 weeks' time, which will be the week before Chapter 1 releases.
Okay.
Yep, and that we can discuss anything else that comes out between now and then, which may happen, and also just our predictions for the volume, our final thoughts before the volume kicks off. It'll be the last sort of season 3.5 or whatever we're calling it at the moment.
There are still a few things to discuss. The content from Volume 7. Some general stuff I've seen Eddie talk about on Twitter and Reddit and stuff, which I always keep note of. I'm always tracking Eddie. I'm always seeing what that man says.
Yes.
I'm always keeping an eye on what that man says because he's such a wealth of information. Love talking about the Grim campaign, but I don't think Larissa will have time to watch that all.
No, unfortunately, probably not. I've been meaning to, but yeah.
Yeah, but I again, like I've said 100 times, like I love that. That was my favorite series. It recently wrapped up 9 episodes. For this season, hopefully get season 2.
Yeah, if only be one of those I watch in between volumes 8 and 9.
Yeah. It just adds a lot to Mistral, and the characters are so endearing, and so fun, and it's just, and I don't think it adds much to the obviously because it's a D&D style game. There's like a few leniencies taken, like how aura works and how magic works. It's a little bit like loose, but again, it just so it makes it all work in the sense of D&D. But yeah, we've got the comedy notes, Eddie stuff, and we'll do like actual predictions of what we want to see and what we think we'll see in Volume 8, which I imagine will be completely wrong, as they always are.
I'll never know. We might get a grain or two of it right.
It'll be nice to discuss it. Of course it will be. But, who knows what the direction this is going to be.
Yeah. So, we'll be in 2 weeks' time, and then it'll be every week after that we'll be doing the Corner of Remnant.
Hopefully, as long as internet stays stable and we don't move again, because that tends to keep happening around January and February.
Yeah, we always seem to miss the finale.
Again, volume 6 was the best. I did everything happened perfectly in Volume 6. Every volume other than that, something's gone wrong.
Yep, that's it. That's not what I wanted to type. Is that the right command? Nope. Make sure you do follow us on Twitter. That's what I'm trying to do. Blah. Oh god, I've got too many things. Where is it? Always get it. Oh, it's the other way around.
While Larissa does that, I was going to say thank everyone who's watching the stream, whether it's live or whether it's post. Just thank you so much. I had a blast today discussing all this. I hope you guys did too. Like I said, don't forget to comment below if you're watching the VOD. We'll be down in the discussion. We'll be down in the comments replying to you guys. Again, we'll be back here in 2 weeks, and we'll be doing the rest of the streams every single week.
Every week then.
During Volume 8. Obviously, Rooster will be doing reactions to Volume 8. I'll be doing artwork to Volume 8. Both spoiled, so be wary. Mine more so because mine come out much earlier. But yeah, I'm not restricted by YouTube and Rooster Teeth and all that stuff.
Yeah, all the fun of it.
Yeah, I think that's mainly it. Just again, thank you everyone. Thank you.
Yes, Larissa. Thank you everyone.
Love discussing this with you.
Yes.
And we'll be back in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks' time. Until then, where is she? Oh, hail the great one. And yeah, we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Bye. Catch you later. Thank you all for watching. Bye.